Hi there, everyone. My name is Xavier, and welcome to the world of Katherine. As someone who's usually very story-focused, Katherine is weird for me because it's one of the few games that you could probably completely remove the story from, and I don't think I'd really care that much. Not to say the story is horrible or anything, but it's really just okay. The thing I love about Katherine is the uniquely frantic world of nightmare puzzle platforming that represents the bulk of the experience. The funny thing is, I picked it up on a whim during one of the GameStop's buy two get one free sales. I really did not expect to get totally obsessed with it. Something about life or death block pushing just scratches an itch, kind of like when you play really difficult levels in rhythm games where you completely zone out for several minutes and then wake up to the glorious sound of the level clear sound effects. Except, depending on the level, it's more like the glorious sound of falling to your death in Katherine's case. All this to say, Katherine is somewhat unique in the world of puzzle platforming. There's not many in the genre that I would describe as high octane, but this one certainly fits the bill. But what is it about it that sets it apart from its peers? If you're not familiar with it, Katherine is an Atlas title. Those are the people who made Persona. And it's a bit infamous for its story despite not being one of the blockbuster titles in Atlas's library. The premise involves a man named Vincent Brooks, who has been dating his girlfriend Katherine, that's Katherine with a K, for some time. She's been dropping hints for a while that she wants to get married, but Vincent is somewhat hesitant about the idea. One night, as he's hanging out at the bar after his drinking buddies have left, he meets Katherine. Now this is Katherine with a C. In contrast to Vincent's girlfriend, this Katherine is the carefree, bubbly party girl type, and Vincent is immediately taken by her. After meeting Katherine with a C, Vincent starts to have nightmares where he and a bunch of other men, all depicted as bipedal sheep, have to climb a huge tower of blocks that is slowly falling out from underneath them. Each night, the tower becomes more difficult, and the sheepmen have to fight against time and each other to hopefully make it to the top and survive, while it becomes more and more evident that those who fall are losing their lives in the waking world. In addition to the block tower sequences, which make up the bulk of the gameplay, you also have various choices throughout the game, usually revolving around Vincent's or your feelings about relationships, and whether Vincent will stay faithful to his girlfriend or take off with the new fling. The whole game revolves around this theme of fidelity. I have a lot to say about that, but that's not the topic of today's video. Today we're talking about gameplay. You see, Katherine is actually 3 different games in one. Maybe even 4 different games, depending on how you want to count. In the style of other Atlas games, the game is split into a real-world social simulation time and the nightmare puzzle platforming time. However, in addition to this, there's 2 more games. Rapunzel, a far too in-depth minigame, and Babel, the post-game challenge stages. The thing about these 3 puzzle platforming adventures is that they're all the same, in that they're all completely different. Let's talk about it. The main gameplay, which we'll call The Nightmare, is a moderately paced puzzle platforming game where you have to push and pull blocks, shimmy around ledges, and, with any luck, make it to the top of the tower. Each night of the real-world game is one nightmare, which is divided into a few different sections, each with a landing in between and a boss at the end. The boss isn't a fight, but more a giant enemy that attempts to attack you while you climb.
Child with chainsaw has appeared.
Right, I got it.
It's the killer. Do not die.
The stage starts with one chunk of blocks, usually around 10 blocks in height. As you approach the top of that chunk, the next chunk will fall from above and join with the first chunk wherever they meet. Blocks can obviously stack, but they can also connect at the edge and float. Each nightmare has a different number of chunks, and special blocks are introduced as the game progresses. Cracked blocks are partially broken and can only be stepped on twice. You can hang off of them without consequences. If you hang off of one that's about to crumble, it will graciously wait until you get off of it to do so. Ice blocks, as you would expect, are slippery. When you step on one, you'll keep sliding until you reach a non-ice block, or the edge. You can step onto and off them up or down safely, and you can also safely traverse them by hanging off the edges. Trap blocks will shoot out spikes when you step on them. They're simple enough to avoid, just step off immediately before the spikes trigger. Heavy blocks just take a longer time to move. Immovable blocks can't be moved, except by falling. Bomb blocks and super bomb blocks activate when stepped on, and will detonate after a short countdown. They destroy themselves and turn all normal blocks within their blast radius into cracked blocks. They will also knock 2-step cracked blocks down to 1-step cracked blocks, and destroy all 1-step cracked blocks, ice blocks, and other bomb blocks. Spring blocks will launch you into the air, allowing you to skip large chunks if you can find a spot to grab onto above. They can be problematic if you can't use them though, because the launch animation takes some time and triggers every time you step on it. Black hole blocks will consume anything put on top of them, including you. Monster blocks have gross little mouths and will randomly move around on their own every so often. They'll push you off if you climb in front of their face, but you can still push and pull them from that side. You can kill them by stepping on top of them, after which they just act like normal blocks. Finally, mystery blocks will randomly turn into a different kind of block immediately upon being stepped on. If they turn into something that can be activated by being stepped on, they will activate immediately. Each nightmare has a different number of steps, starting at 40 on the first level, and each one also introduces increasingly complex designs requiring more skill and knowledge to navigate to the top. At the beginning, simply making a staircase will get you to the top with no issues, but towards the end of the game, you'll have less space to maneuver, higher heights to climb without support, and more hazards to avoid, requiring advanced techniques to succeed. Other sheep climbing will teach you techniques at the landings, so you're not completely on your own, but similar to a game like Portal, you kinda just have to learn how to think with the blocks. In addition to all of this, the rows will fall out from underneath you in set intervals as you go, one block row at a time. It truly is a nightmare, but it's a really fun challenge, and definitely the kind of game where after finishing the last stage you go back to the beginning and wonder how you ever found it difficult. Next up we have Rapunzel, the not-so-mini minigame. During the social simulation segments of Katherine, you can find the Rapunzel arcade machine in the bar. Like the main game, this minigame is about climbing a tower of blocks, but the focus here is much more strategic. All the blocks are in place to start with, there's fewer special blocks, and you have all the time in the world to examine the layout and figure out a way up. The strategic nature of it does add a few complications, however. Unlike in the Nightmare, the exit is at a set height, and you cannot let it fall or you get an instant game over. You have a limited number of moves, although it's a pretty generous amount, and the levels are much more three-dimensional. In Nightmare and Babel, with a few exceptions, you are usually only working on the layer you're standing on and one layer deeper and above you. You won't usually have to stack things forward to back to solve the stage. However, in Rapunzel, the further you get in the levels, the more you will have to consider the depth of the blocks to find ways to the top. Now, Rapunzel is easily my least favorite of the three, but I do still enjoy it quite a bit. The harder stages tend to get a bit frustrating since the other modes encourage you to work through the problem hands-on and Rapunzel requires you to plan ahead a little more. I had to look up walkthroughs for more than a few of the stages to finish them all for the Platinum Trophy, but honestly, the craziest thing about Rapunzel is that it has a whopping 128 stages, and only one single music track for all of them to share, making it a ridiculously formidable minigame. Finally, this brings us to Babel. These are a set of 4 challenge stages which unlock after getting increasing numbers of gold trophies in the main game. Like I assume most people, I thought these would just be more difficult versions of the same style game as the Nightmare. And they are. Sort of. When I started the first stage, Altar, I quickly discovered it was a much more difficult challenge than I had expected. They did bill it as a challenge for expert players, so I guess they didn't lie. The thing that's interesting about it, though, is that it's a lot more different than the main game than it seems to the casual observer, which is why I'm calling it a different game. Similar to the Nightmare stages, in Babel, you're tasked with climbing a tower of blocks by pushing, pulling, shimmying, and climbing. They increase in difficulty as you go through them, introducing the same blocks from the main game, but there's a few major differences in presentation here. First is, while the Nightmare stages always have the same chunks in the same order, Babel stages are different every time. They have a sort of controlled randomness. For each level of each stage, there's a set of 10 or so possible chunks, and the game will choose one at random to throw down each time a new chunk is called. The second is, Babel levels are much longer. The very last stage of the Nightmare, which is a boss, tops out at roughly 148 steps. The first level of Babel hits 150, and it only goes up from there. On normal and easy mode, the Nightmare has an undo button, which you can use up to 9 times in a row. Mimicking the hard difficulty, Babel has no undo button. Finally, the blocks under you will fall with increasing speed the longer it takes you to complete each level. It starts out as a leisurely 1 row drop per 10 seconds or so, and can speed up all the way to 2 rows per second. You have time to solve the problem, but taking too much time is a recipe for disaster. The interval for blocks dropping resets each time you reach a new level. Now, you're probably wondering how this constitutes enough of a difference to warrant calling an entirely different game, and it's true that this alone isn't much. It's really the way that you have to play that makes me think of it differently. When I first started attempting Altar, I tried it again, and again, and again, and barely made any progress over each last attempt, if progress was made at all. I'd gotten pretty good at the Nightmare stages. Why was I struggling so much on the easiest level of Babel? I couldn't really make sense of it. But after bashing my head into it probably a good 30 times, it started to become clear. I was playing it wrong. Besides being a test of sheer endurance, Babel's randomness presents a problem that's rarely, if ever, seen in the main game. Instability. In the Nightmare stages, it's not uncommon to end up on an island with no way up, forced to wait for the blocks to fall out from under you as you contemplate your own stupidity, but in those cases it's pretty much always on you. You don't know your techniques, you made a wrong move, you didn't think about what you were doing, and now you're stranded. Reset and try again. In Babel, this is a very common occurrence, and while this is still on you, it feels like the level's fault. After all, you beat the main game, you're good at this, right? The problem is, you don't know what chunk you're getting next. You don't have the luxury of trying the same section over and over, because it'll be different this time. But most importantly, you don't know where the blocks will fall. In the Nightmare, the chunks are designed to fit together pretty seamlessly. As long as you don't mess up the top layer a bunch, the next layer will fall in and fit to it like a piece of a jigsaw puzzle, with a glorious edge. In Babel, the chunks in each level are designed to play together, but their fit is, by necessity, much more unpredictable. The chunk could fall in beautifully, or it could fall in and immediately lose half of its mass because there was nothing for it to connect to. All this to say, the Nightmare is a game about climbing a tower. Babel is a game about building a tower. Nothing made this clearer to me than when I finally beat Altar, then Menhir, then Obelisk, and took a break to play the main game again. I wanted to see how much faster I was. And I failed the first level. Turns out hammering the skill of making flat platforms into your thumbs and then going to play a game where you already have them is a recipe for wasting important time. With practice, you can hone your skills in such a way that it allows you to switch between the two games with more ease, but I can tell you with some level of confidence that I can accurately guess if someone has beaten Babel before, just by watching them play the Nightmare stages. I would be really curious to see how someone who was taught all the basic techniques and controls would do on Babel with no prior understanding of the Nightmare stages. I'm planning for my next video to be a guide to the Babel stages, so if you're currently attempting them and need some pointers, be sure to check that one out. There is some good info on the Katherine wiki, but I think most people benefit from watching the techniques be performed instead of just reading about them, so I'm hoping the video will help to explain them a little more. This section is a little less relevant to the thesis statement here, but I figured I'd include a little info about Full Body, which is the remaster of the game, how it differs from the original, and which one you should get. Full Body added and improved a few new things. By a few, I mean quite a few. Probably the most advertised is that there's a new love interest for Vincent. Her name is Katherine. With a Q, because why not? But most of the characters call her Rin, because that's way less confusing. I don't know that she adds a whole lot to the story as a whole, but she's cute, and I enjoy her somewhat more lighthearted storyline. Rin's route comes with 4 new Nightmare stages, which introduces a new laser block, which fires lasers in various directions at set intervals. They'll kill you if you're in front of them, just like you would expect. There's also a whole new game mode, which introduces combination/jewel blocks, which are larger blocks that come in various Tetris-like shapes. This is essentially a whole new version of the game. Alternate routes are also available for both Katherine with a C and Katherine with a K. There's also a bunch of fun DLC packs you can buy, although they're a little expensive. They added a feature where during the Nightmare you can now see spots where other players die, which is fun. But most importantly, they made some really big quality of life improvements. The first is that the controls are a lot snappier, so you have far fewer issues with Vincent straying off course and getting himself killed, like this. Or this. Or this. In addition to that, 2 big quality of life improvements that I really missed when I was playing the PC version of Classic to get this footage, and I'd say Full Body is worth it just for these if you want to get the gold trophies or if you intend to play Babel or hard mode. First, on top of the snappier controls, the grab button no longer causes Vincent to let go when hanging, leading to a lot fewer accident falls to your death, like this, or like this. Also, mystery blocks now change when you step off of them, which means they won't immediately activate if they turn into a trap or a bomb block. I cannot tell you how much these 2 small changes improve the Babel experience for me. I have really bad luck, so the RNG of the mystery blocks in particular tanked more than a fair share of runs for me. Also, the monster blocks can still move on their own, but they only move if you move a block, which also reduces the RNG aspect. Finally, there is an issue with the original PS3 version of Babel's last stage, Axis Mundi. You ascend to the second level almost instantly from the start of the stage, which means you start getting level 2 chunks of blocks immediately, which don't mesh very well with the starting chunk, and you have 1 level's worth of time to complete 2 levels worth of height. It's essentially impossible to beat. Some mad lad out there has managed to do it, but they're literally the only person I've seen do it, and you'd be a fool to follow in their footsteps. Okay, I was originally just going to edit that out, but I'm adding this instead because I'm absolutely blown away by this. I was going off my memory of how the level was bugged, but when I was looking for the video of the person who did manage to beat it, I realized it's actually worse. You do ascend to level 2 about 3 steps into the stage, but from then until just before the end of the level, you're stuck on level 2, which means the road dropping speed increases until it hits the maximum possible speed, and then stays there until you manage to get to level 3. On top of that, the game thinks you're at level 9, so you get much more complicated wall configurations for the entire level as well. When you finally reach level 3, you'll get level 10 configurations and the goal platform. What you're watching here is the mad lad who beat it, a Japanese player named Neza, who would have had to either hack a Japanese PS3 or buy a US PS3 and import a US copy of the game to do this, on top of the staggering number of attempts I'm sure it took. Huge respect, but I'm horrified. Why would you do this to yourself? Why am I now kind of tempted to do this to myself? Atlas, please just make a Katherine sequel or more DLC levels or something so I don't have to do this. The other versions of Classic on the Xbox 360 and PC have fixed this bug, and it's not present in full body. So if you do have the PS3 version already, the co-op mode isn't bugged, so you can try and dual-wield controllers like I did if you want. Obviously, all of this said, I think full body is your best bet, especially given that the sales nowadays bring the two games to nearly the same price, but if you want to play it on PC, you'll have to get Classic, because Atlas still hates PCs for some reason and hasn't released full body on Steam yet. If you happen to already own Classic, then I'd start with that and get full body later if you're still craving more punishment. And that's about it for now. I wanted to talk about this game mostly because, as a small-time indie developer, I was impressed by the ingenuity of the gameplay in general and the amount of variety that the difficulties add, and even more impressed that they managed to execute the same idea in 3 completely different ways in the same game. If this has inspired you to play the game for yourself, I highly encourage you to give it a shot. You don't have to put yourself through Rapunzel or Babel if you don't want to, the main game is plenty fun and long enough, but I wish you luck if you decide to do them. Thanks for watching! If you like this video, or you're interested in more content about analyzing stories and mechanics in anime games and more, consider hitting that subscribe button. See you all in the next one.